Good morning, everyone. We are going to begin. Happy Friday to all of you, and thank you for coming this morning. We will be running our open forum similar to prior open forums. The format will be the same, and we're very, very grateful for your participation and questions. We have a smaller group this morning, so everyone will have a chance to ask a question if you need to. We've had a very busy week for APASP. A lot of subcommittee work. We've had 2 author trainings on Tuesday and Wednesday that were very well attended, one standing room only. We've also are gearing up for our pilot writing to begin right away. Authors will be writing next week, and we invite any of you here to participate in the pilot. We'd be delighted to have you join in that aspect of this work. My name is Nathan Lindsay. I serve as the Associate Provost. I'm standing in for Beverly Edmond this morning, and we'll have the other panelists introduce themselves.
John DeBoer, I'm School of Theater and Dance.
Eric Johnston, graduate student.
Jen Zelmer Quaresma, Athletic Academic Services.
Liz Putnam, School of Pharmacy.
Stephanie Domitrovich, Academic Advising.
Lori Fisher, Career Services.
Conservation. Tom DeLuca, W.A. Franke, College of Forestry and Conservation. Thank you.
Rosalind Haley, UMPD, Equal Opportunity.
Very good. We also have a few other members of the task force who are here in the audience. So as questions come up, we'll all respond to those. This is a pretty open format. We will just open the floor to you for any comments or questions that you have for us. Quick update from Jen.
If there aren't any questions at this time, maybe this will trigger some thoughts. But I just wanted to let you know, yesterday during the forum, we had a couple of questions come up about the criteria that we have posted on the website. And so just so you're aware, we have been taking the feedback that has been coming in about the criteria. And so we have updated the criteria more specifically on the academic side with the research component for programs that do have research, creative scholarship, and activities, extra activities. So there is something going to be posted on the website by next week with our updated criteria for academics and if we have any changes for administrative services. So the one you're seeing that's on the website right now is the original one that went out and has now been updated with the comments and feedback that we have received thus far. Did it do it to yesterday? Okay, yesterday we did not have it updated, and so people were wanting to make sure it was updated. So that is now current.
I guess we're having a few technical issues with the live streams. That's why you see a flurry of activity. So hopefully it's live.
It's only being recorded right now. It's not going out live.
Okay. Great.
So, I'm Ann Delaney with Missoula College. The criteria for academics for the 4-year campus, I haven't seen that there's a difference between the 4-year and the 2-year. And it seems as though we should be thinking about the differences that we have because we are quite different. And so are you going to be working on changing that criteria so it matches 2-year as well when you start to look at the 2-year campus?
Yeah. So regarding 2-year campuses, on our criteria right now, we have both quantitative and qualitative metrics. All the qualitative metrics that you can answer will be done for the 2-year colleges. There's some quantitative metrics that only apply to graduate schools or graduate programs, professional programs, and so that data will only be populated for what actually applies to a 2-year college. In terms of looking at programs, we'll first group them in 2-year colleges and kind of and so your quintiles for the data will be to similar programs that you're in. So a 2-year college will be compared on number of students, degrees awarded for a 2-year institution, like the Missoula College, all those programs. So they won't be compared to a graduate program or to undergraduate program directly. But eventually those, we'll have quintiles get numbers, and then we'll populate the full list to compare across all campuses, all colleges. Does that?
Yeah. Our goal at the Missoula College is to have smaller course classes and be more closely attached to the students in order to make them, help them succeed in a four-year program. So consequently, our new building has one giant classroom for anatomy and physiology, and every other one is 30 to 40 students. So we have to keep that in mind. We're not going to be teaching giant classes.
One of the things that was added to that criteria last week that's now up on the web under productivity is we ask about research and scholarly activity, but we've also asked about the instructional component of the program so that you can describe anything unique and remarkable about the instructional component of your program. We also want you to talk to the quantitative data. So you'll have your quantitative data that's been pre-populated, although for the pilot that we're doing, it's being added in as we go. You'll be able to explain that data underneath. So if you've got a certain number of student credit hours per faculty member, and there's a reason for that that's rooted in your mission, then you'll be able to speak to that in that field underneath the quantitative data.
Okay, I think our student credit hours are a little higher since we have 15 credits per semester that we are required in our workload. So it's quite large.
Yeah.
And hard to do.
I just wanted to say, too, with the qualitative questions that we have, they should, we tried to direct them so that they apply to the different programs. And we did break some of them out because we knew that we couldn't capture that in one question. So when you go through that, if you look at a criteria and you say, you know what, none of this applies to what we're looking at here, let us know, because nothing is concrete at this point. So we're still making modifications to the criteria.
That was what I was going to say too, Ann. If there's something that doesn't make sense or something that we have overlooked that is really obvious that could be included, please provide us with that feedback also. Yeah, thanks.
And just and we have been taking the feedback that we've received, and we've been applying them ongoing, like every day. It's like we're looking and discussing those changes.
This is Bruce Bowler from Chemistry and Biochemistry. You put out a units of analysis list yesterday, and if you look down at it's all by org number, which means you're a unit of analysis if you have a budget, which is a rational thing to do since we're looking at how to handle budget. If you look down the list in H&S, there are a lot of programs that don't have org numbers because they don't have independent budgets. So how are you going to handle that in your analysis?
We're taking feedback on that, Bruce. Exactly for what you said. We started with the logical starting point, matching it to the finance system, the orgs. That doesn't mean that's where we have to end up. And these guys are taking feedback about what would make most sense. It's more important that you get the right unit of analysis, and then we just try and figure out the best data to provide for that. So if you have suggestions about better ways of organizing it, shoot them to us and we'll get that in there.
Good morning. I'm Darlene Sampson with the TRIO Student Support Services Program. And I'm just curious, and I have to be honest to say that I haven't delved deeply into this yet, but we're grant funded, so we have policies and procedures and reporting that we use to the U.S. Department of Education. How have you looked at these types of programs? And I'm just curious to know how many programs on campus are there that are funded by external resources?
I can try to answer that. So what we've decided to do as a task force, because we have been tasked to look at all funding, not just general funds or anything like that. And in order to make sure that we give enough attention to the general funds and the other funds as well, we're working in 2 phases now. So if you don't get any general funds, you'll still need to turn your report in when the other reports, but we'll be looking at that afterwards. I can't speak to how many programs are grant funded. And there's also grant funded programs that are under general funds, and then we've got our auxiliaries. That'll probably be something that is more clear down the road.
But it's my understanding that even if you're just partially general fund supported, you go through phase one, whereas programs that are 100% grant funded or auxiliary funded, those go through phase two. So they are considered separately.
And just to be clear, those phases don't mean anything to the people writing the reports. The reports are all done at the same time and all due at October 2nd. What we've done is to try to be as equitable as possible in our analysis of the reports is to split it up into 2 different phases for review. So it doesn't make any difference to you guys. It makes a lot of difference to us trying to handle the workload. And yes, we don't have any idea of how many units there are like you. There's a lot of centers that are totally grant funded. There's a lot of other entities that are totally grant funded like yours. If you go ahead and look through everything that we've put out, all the criteria and everything else, once again, if you see something that either, if it doesn't apply to you, then that's easy. That's not applicable. But if there's something we're missing that would be critical for a proper analysis of your unit, then I think shoot us an email or shoot us the comment, the feedback, so that we can consider how we can incorporate that.
Bruce Bowler from Chemistry and Biochemistry again. Are you going to be considering foundation funds that come into various departments as well? Because that, for some departments, is a substantial fraction of their funding and does provide some indication of the support for that program.
Yes, to our knowledge, we are doing those as well. Every fund.
Yeah, we're considering all funds. And if it's an institute that's 100% foundation funded, we have one that almost falls into that category, that would have, again, gone into phase two, but it would still, regardless, be evaluated similar to all the others.
Erin Bauckham from the library. You said that you've already updated criteria for the academic side as it goes for research, for faculty and everyone that does research. Our concern is that there are administrative services that have faculty that do research and service on top of an increasingly large workload, and we provided the feedback, but we've not gotten any reassurances that we'll be able to add that to our metrics. So you guys keep saying that you're considering everything and you're updating constantly, but we haven't really gotten any kind of response.
One point with the library is we did go over the unit of analysis, and we have had discussion about whether to look at the library as a single unit or as more than one unit. And I think it needs to be looked at as more than one unit, and I think it will clarify the difference between the criteria, if that helps at all. But we are also going through each one of those, and if you submitted something about the unit of analysis, I believe that our metrics committee is replying to every one of those. If it is a general if it's something about the criteria, then it may not be responded to directly, but it may be applied in future drafts. And hopefully we'll be able to answer more questions through the frequently asked questions. That doesn't satisfy you, does it?
It doesn't help much.
Okay.
Because we don't, oh, sorry. It doesn't help much because when you look at the metrics for academic versus administrative, there's a very clear emphasis on credit hours and teaching, and the library takes care of every student on campus, but we have very few credit courses. So having an academic split like that doesn't do much good because we only need like 2 or 3 pieces from it. We don't need a completely separate, well, the discussion we've had is that it doesn't make sense to have that completely separate report for the academic services. At least it doesn't make sense to us.
So everything you just said is a beautiful way of of speaking to what you do as a faculty member in the library, and I see so many opportunities to put everything you just said into the administrative services criteria. I mean, simply because it doesn't ask it in the exact same way that the academic program criteria asks it, doesn't mean you can't use that as a way of answering these qualitative metrics on administrative services. You can speak to the student credit hours that you generate as part of your productivity. You can speak to the number of students you serve and the number of publications your faculty do. That is all part of what you do, and so I think it fits quite nicely within the administrative services criteria, for sure.
We agree. We just had like 2 or 3 qualitative criteria we would like to add because each one is 250 words. So that's the issue we're having, is like we would love to speak to all of this, but we understand the number of reports you're going to have to read. We understand why there's a word limit. So we would, instead of generating a completely separate report, like to add 1 or 2 metric boxes. So we have a little bit more room, a few more words, and we're not generating a completely new report that all of you guys have to read.
So a great help for us would be if you'd put in the feedback on the website to say, please consider putting this metric box under this question, under the Qualtrics survey to address this issue, and so that we can see if it will fit across the board for a type of question. That would really help.
We did.
Oh.
But we just didn't understand if that was even something you guys were considering.
Did somebody
So-
put their name on that in the feedback? Okay, if
Yeah,
they did put
we-
their name on it, Chris and Andrew are addressing it.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, we just didn't, we were just kind of leery to do it because we didn't even know if it was something that was under consideration. We were just kind of hopefully throwing it out there.
Yeah.
So Effie Kern from Global Engagement Office. I was wondering if we can submit appendices to the report well, it supports the evidence, the qualitative, especially the quantitative data. Like we have surveys, we have focus groups and so forth. So, you know, if you want to examine the evidence of our quantitative data, that would be helpful.
My recollection is that we had agreed upon no appendices, but I don't remember exactly what that where that discussion when it occurred or what the final decision on it was. But you know, each report is going to be each question is 250 words. There's going to be 570 reports to review, and we have 7 weeks to review it. So it really limits the amount of text that this small group can go through realistically in a period of time. Now, that not to say that it's not worth having that information available, and it might be that in your text under the qualitative discussion, you include a hyperlink or a link to a site where you have the appendice information, and then if we're trying to drill down on a given issue within a report, we have the opportunity to hyperlink to that site.
Hi, it's Chad Bishop with Wildlife Biology. Just a quick question on, are you factoring in % of out-of-state students? And I asked just from a standpoint of that being a revenue-based question.
Not at the moment, but that has been asked a few times this week.
So I'd recommend it.
Yep. Thank you, Chad.
Bruce Bowler from Chemistry again. Just so you don't forget who I am. So there was something in the list of what we were going to provide that said something about faculty providing bio sketches, I think. And it was sort of, sounded like it was a shortened form of what you do if you were doing a self-study for a department. Are you going to be more specific about it because of what you want and how long you want it to be?
So, yeah, we actually removed the bio sketch. So that was in an early version, and it just kind of went through with everything. Once we read that, because that's a lot of that is not evaluated for the metrics. It's just information for the group. And when we saw that the bio sketches were in there,
Okay, so
we
that's
didn't want a
not-
full bio sketch of every faculty member on
Okay,
campus
yeah,
along
fine.
with everything
That's
else.
fine.
So, yeah.
Just a quick question. Will charts and graphs be acceptable? That'd be a great way to give you some data. Yeah, how many words will you count for it?
We're working through the process, and we're working on the form through Qualtrics, so we're learning what we can get through that, and so as we go through this pilot process, we'll be able to answer those questions more clearly, because I think we do want that kind of information. It's just how do we get it and in a reasonable way. And the other thing I wanted to mention is if you have or have not decided to go through the pilot process, I would encourage you to go ahead and do it. So the way that the pilot process is any one of you that says, hey, I want to be part of this pilot process, can go through and answer the questions. That gives you an opportunity to give us feedback on those things that we've missed. Of those that are answered, we will review 6 for our experience. We won't be giving feedback on those, but this is a really good opportunity for you to tell us how those questions apply.
And along the same lines, with the word limits, if you do go through the pilot process, we're getting we want to get feedback on everything. So if 250 words is not enough and we get that from a lot of people for a certain metric, not everyone has to be 250 words, but right now we just set everything at 250 words to try and limit the amount that's within the reports that we review. But if you can't answer a qualitative metrics with that, let us know.
I'm Alan Zelda-Petrie in the Psychology Department. I'm wondering how you're going to manage to compare programs that have less than 5 years of information available.
Thanks, Alan. So we've been discussing that for several weeks. And what we've decided to do is if they have 4, we're going to include them with all the others. And if they have 3 or less, then we're still going to evaluate them, but we're going to rank those new programs with 3 or less years of data separately. So it kind of realize that they are new, they're still getting their legs under them, they don't have as much data available. So we have just introduced a separate kind of ranking category for those new programs. But they're going to be evaluated in the same process with everybody else.
Hello, I'm Robert Squires at UM Online. I have a follow-up question related to the different services there. Well, actually, I think it might have just slipped me. If you give me a second. It's terrible when you have a junior-senior moment. I'm going to pass the mic up for a second.
Good morning, Chelsea Rayfield from Missoula College Advising. One thing that I'm a little fuzzy on for those programs who are participating in the pilot, will they have the opportunity to revise and resubmit their reports? I know in the authorship meetings there was lots of discussion on, workshops and working with the advocates, around September or closer to the deadline. So I just wanted some clarification on that one.
Yes, is the short answer. Yeah, we're not going to give any feedback on any of the pilot reports. So once you've done it, that's a good draft to then share with your colleagues and to talk over before we have the deadline in October.
Yeah, so to further clarify, doing the pilot doesn't get you out of doing formal report at the end. Because ideally, between the pilot participants' feedback and our realization of how we're looking at things, there may be modifications, most likely may be modifications made so that we can clarify the entire process, both for the people writing the reports and for us trying to review them.
I just wanted to say, too, another advantage to participating in the pilot program is you may not be getting feedback, but some of the criteria that we're asking is not going to change. So you'll kind of have a head start on that crunch time that comes up, and at least you'll have some of that stuff that you've already put together to help you with that. And on that note, I have to encourage everyone to also think about those org charts, because that is something else that we are requesting, and I know that sometimes it takes time to update those, so that's something else that people can get a head start on.
If I can have that microphone.
Thank you. So the question was, with programs that are newer, with programs on an administrative side that have changed over the last 5 years, so some that have become self-support as opposed to state-supported, have you had any thought as to how that should be identified as well?
So we specifically said that if it's just been renamed or reorganized, that we are still going to evaluate it as if it had. We're going to challenge Don, who's collecting data on all these things, to actually have the data and track that through the changes and reorganizations. So that is going to be a challenge on the data side, but we are specifying it's really a new programs are in that category of 3 years or less, and not simply renamed or reorganized.
So just a clarification, do you have an org chart if you don't have an org number?
Everybody can have an org chart.
Yeah. I would think you would, because whatever your unit of analysis is, you should be able to come up with an org chart for that unit of analysis. So if you disagree with the units of analysis, now is the time to speak up so that you're not responsible for doing the org chart.
Okay.
If it's necessary, and this is why I've been bringing it up the last couple of days, because the org chart stands out as something that I've noticed can be challenging. If it's necessary to give more instruction on that, let us know, and we can put more information on what exactly we're talking about and what some good tools are to put that together are.
Maybe we can put that under frequently asked questions.
Okay, since everybody's being silent, I am just curious. I want to ask 3 questions. So first of all, I was wondering, of those that are here, who is doing a program evaluation exclusively for an academic program? Just academic, no research combined or anything like that?
That's a non-academic includes research as well.
Right, no, I'm just saying that we had this conversation about there's the academic programs that are degree-seeking that also have research included in that program, and then we have research programs. And I was just curious if there was a split here as far as people that were just had an academic program that is degree-seeking that doesn't include research?
Can you clarify? I don't understand your unit of analysis.
So an academic program being a credit, one that receives credit, and at the end of it, you get a degree, like a bachelor's degree. Do they all include research?
How do you define research?
How do you define research?
Undergraduate doing an honors thesis as part of the bachelor's degree, that's a faculty member, isn't that research?
Yeah, so I think the maybe confusion is that faculty members are all required to do research or scholarly activity. So therefore, any academic program is going to have a research or scholarly activity component. I mean, I know that there are a lot of faculty in Missoula College who you might think of as they're purely academic, purely instructional. At the same time, there's all kinds of literature coming out of two-year schools as to pedagogy and other things. So research is still part of any kind of instruction.
I was going to follow up. I thought I'd follow up on that just really briefly. I think the challenge becomes splitting where that, where those activities fall. If you're associated with a graduate program, a bachelor's degree, and an interdisciplinary degree, you are trying to split that person between those different categories and incorporate some portion of their research. And that's something we're still working on, is how exactly that's going to happen. So it's a big challenge that's in front of us right now.
Well, and the question also comes from the feedback that we've received where people are asking for questions regarding research. And so that was where that question from me came from. The other question that I had was how many people were doing an academic program along with an administrative service report. That's it. What about just administrative services? Thank you.
And in response to the feedback we've received to have more research-based metrics, we've added one of the bullets. So it's not just teaching, but we do have that area where people can emphasize their research within their program.
And service activities as well. So we've actually split out all three of those so that perhaps your emphasis is on teaching, but part of your instructional requirements of your students is that they do service learning, or they have an internship, or they do some kind of a research project. There is a place where you can add extra classroom instructional activity into the report, and you can, and it's up to you as to if you choose to include that in an instructional activity, or if every student is required to do a senior thesis, then that's included in their research, in your research component. But you know, there's flexibility in how you present your data. Obviously, you would want to present it in the best light possible for evaluation, or the clearest way that you can present it so that we can evaluate it fairly.
And when we're saying research, we're incorporating scholarly activity broadly, not just biochemistry research or chemistry.
Pure research.
Oh, talk to the folks in history.
Yeah. Other questions? We have a smaller group, so everyone has a chance if you want to take advantage of that.
5 or 6.
Or 5 or 6.
I just want to say, if you don't have any more questions for the whole group, I know we've all planned to stay here for a little while, and so it would be interesting to talk to you individually and get your feedback as well, if that is better. So,
John, could you describe the pilot, just what's happened and what the timeline is for the next few weeks, just so people have a sense for that if they're not already engaged, if they want to participate?
Sure. We had some author trainings on Tuesday and Wednesday. We have 8 now. We call them author trainers, but they're really advocates for the authors as a way of providing a direct channel during the writing process for faculty and staff and administrators who are authoring reports to work with colleagues and then with these trainers who will then bring feedback back to the task force so that we can make considerations of things that aren't clear and maybe publish some more guidelines. It's a good way of keeping the writing process separate from the task force so that as we're not having any undue influence on anybody's reports and giving anybody a perceived advantage. So we interacted with these author trainers. We've been developing what the trainings are going to look like. We had great turnout with about 50 or 60 people who had really tough questions and suggestions for the forms and the criteria, et cetera. And so Next week, we'll release a pilot version of the Qualtrics forums, and anybody can participate. You won't have the pre-populated data that's going to come from the central source. So part of your job is to go to the data validation site and to start looking at the data for your unit and sending feedback to Dawn about how you can drill down to the programmatic level for academic programs and administrative services to get the data that you need that will be populated in the form come the fall. Then you have the opportunity to do a draft answer of all of the qualitative metrics, submit that form. We're going to choose 6 reports. That'll be 3 academic programs, 3 administrative services at random, and we're going to pilot our scoring process and just take a look at what we actually learn from these reports so that we can make sure that we're using the best methodology possible come the fall to do our prioritization of campus. And so that will take place in about 2 weeks.
July 27th, I think.
July 27th. Our pilot drafts are due a week from Monday. We were going to make them due next Friday at 5 p.m., which is kind of arbitrary, and nobody's going to check them at 5 p.m. on a Friday, so we gave everybody all the way until 8 a.m. on Monday to complete those reports, because somebody will come back to work at that point and pull those reports. We also plan on reading all of the reports. We won't score all of the reports, but 6 will give us an idea of what the scoring process is like. But reading all of the reports will point to any trends in misunderstanding or just maybe useless data that we end up getting that doesn't really mean anything. And so it'll let us refine the process before we really dive in. Did I miss anything?
Perfect. So we're not sure that we have 3 academic programs and 3 administrative services right now. So if you're considering
4 RSVPs so far.
Yeah, so we need 2 more. Potentially. Also, really quickly, Dawn, from your communication, if people are not participating in the pilot, what should they be doing right now?
What we sent out has really very little to do with the pilot. We need everybody to be looking at the data, because the goal is that by that first week of August, we'll have agreed on the data that's going to be in your official reports. And the intention of the task force is that they do not want to see the report saying your data is all wrong, it really should be this. You should, in your official report, be writing to why is the data doing what it's doing, what's happened in your area that's caused the data to change. So this is your opportunity. Everybody should be getting in and looking at everything that we have posted out there and making certain that you agree with the numbers that we've put together.
These are kind of like little videos that we're making impromptu here. It's good. Well, we don't want to hold people. Are there any last questions or comments?
Oh, one thing I will say about the pilot, if you didn't attend a training but suddenly you're interested, just come see me right now. I'll write down your email address so I can send you all of the information I sent to the other interested parties. So.
Raquel Aroca, I work with NSF Grant. I just want to thank you. It's a tremendous work that you've been doing, and I've been very impressed with how you're communicating. Sometimes it's kind of the email comes on the day where something's happening, so that's a little bit, but I know it's time constraint and all the work you're doing, but I've been very impressed with the work, the quality of the work, and the communication you've been putting out, and all the information on the website. So I want to make sure that you know that. So thank you.
Very good. Well, we thank you for coming. And again, if you have any follow-up questions, please come up and talk to the members of the task force. Have a great Friday.